So, thank you for coming for this talk, and I have a pleasure to invite Professor Miguel Nussbaum from Catholic University of Chile. We have known each other for many, many years, and I started knowing about his work when he was working on creating systems for ad hoc, small collaborative groups using technology-based solutions. Then I saw his work on multi-mouse, one computer fitted with 50 mouse, and maybe you went even further after that. But more recently, he has been involved in the changes in the education system itself, and he is a member of National Association for Agency for Quality of Education, and he has been looking into different types of assessments, what works, what are the skills that students need, and we'll be talking today about how to teach creatively. So, Professor Nussbaum, welcome.
Thank you very much.
And looking forward to your talk. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Kinshi, for making this talk. I think we have an urgency in front of us. And why do I think we have an urgency? I found this data from the internet, of course, and that's the US unemployment rate in the last 125 years. And if you see, besides the Big Depression, it's quite steady. Nothing had really changed. Of course, there was something big in 2008, but it's going down again. But you see, it's always around 6%. So unemployment hasn't been really a problem. Even if things happened in the last 100 years, in agriculture, our machines substitute a lot of people today. And what's interesting, for example, what happens with the electric bill. The electric bill, somebody went to our house, read the bill, then somebody had to calculate it, and somebody had to print it, and somebody had to bring it home. Today it's almost automatic, and in some cases completely automatic. But the unemployment hasn't really increased. And why did the unemployment increase? Because basically what happened, if you see the literate and illiterate world population, the literacy went down enormously. And that really satisfied the workforce. So it was a relationship between literacy, basic literacy, that helped a lot to increase the people to find a job. But things are really changing, and changing very fast. The current future, robots are everywhere. In agriculture, robots will do absolutely everything. The driverless car is here. And how many jobs will disappear with a driverless car? And look, journalists, this software is here now for almost 5 years now. Software that write articles, which people cannot find who wrote the article. It's a people or a software. So jobs will begin to disappear. And what we need now are people that do these machines. That's the next step, to create knowledge. But with basic literacy, we won't do that. So we need more than basic literacy. So high-order thinking skills, everybody talks about them in the last 20 years, but still they're not here. So let me understand what really is behind high-order thinking skills. I have 2 PhD students that are working in critical thinking. And one of them developed several systems. And one of the systems was a set of games. I'm going to show them very fast because that's not the focus of the talk, but do you understand what's behind? So the idea was to really, through critical thinking, help the kids to learn a complex problem solving. So this game was about that the kids had to guess how many, or find the tools, not to guess, find the tools, and use the tools to, for example, how many chips are there in this board. So they cannot count them, they have to calculate them. So they have to find that we say ruler, they have to see how many chips are in this side, then how many chips are in this other side, and then the multiplication. So it's not just multiply, it's to transfer knowledge. The second one, how many apples are there in total? They couldn't count them, there was not enough time, so they have to see how many trees there were, how many ones, and then multiply them. It's very similar to the previous one. In how many ships goes through the screen in how many seconds. So they see that every whatever seconds come a ship, so they have to calculate how many ships there will be in 100 seconds, for example. So it's all very simple transfer problems. How many cubes are there in total? So they have to find out. They don't see everyone, all the cubes, so they have to calculate them. It's very simple math, but it's much more than just doing math. What's the area of the figure? And if you have these actions, where will this figure be after doing these actions? So very simple math activities that are targeted up to 4th grade. So what we did was a very sophisticated intermediate tutoring system where we guided the kids. If they were right, they just go through, but if they were wrong, we guided them, giving them different type of feedback. So helping them to find out the way. And it was very sophisticated system that was really based on critical thinking, so that we help the kids to find out how to make these activities. And we had a control group where there was no feedback. In the control group was just right or wrong, and if it was wrong, go again until you solve. And what we found out was very astonishing. It was 50 kids, if I'm not wrong. This is the control pre and post. There was no feedback here. And what we found was that the kids learned more significantly from the pre to the post. And then the experimental, they also learned more significantly. But if you see the figures, the kids from the control group learned more than from the experimental group. And why did this happen? We saw how many mistakes did the kids make. And the kids from the control group, where there was no feedback given, just say right or wrong, but there was no guidance in the feedback, they made much more mistakes. And the kids from the experimental group, since they were guided, they did much less mistakes. So what happened was that they didn't really transfer, because they were helped, and through this help they solved the different quizzes. But this help didn't allow them to really make the transfer, while the other kids had to find out how to solve it. So you say, this doesn't convince me very much. Now comes the film that a couple of you have already seen. Not all of you have seen it, but it's my favorite movie about the raven. Look what we're doing with the kids. It's exactly what happened with the raven. Is the raven a critical thinker? Of course not. But it looks like. What the raven has to do is to solve a very difficult quiz. He has a piece of meat over here, but the meat, he cannot get the meat with his how you say it? Yeah. So he has a little piece of wood over there. This is a small piece of wood, but with this small piece of wood, with this small stick, he cannot get the meat. So he finds out that there is a larger stick over here. With this stick, he can get the meat out, but this large stick is inside the case, but this case cannot be opened if you don't put 3 stones over here so that the lever opens and the stick comes out. So it's a very sophisticated quiz. And see how the raven solves this quiz. It starts by only where it is. So you see the raven is looking for where the different pieces are, takes the small stick, will try with a small stick, and will find out that he cannot get the piece of meat. So say, oh, I can't get the piece of meat. So he takes out the stones now, takes one of the stones out, and will take the 3 stones out. So taking out the stones, one by one. Now the second one, and these stones will be used to take the long stick through pushing the level. Now the second stone is here, is going now to, no, not yet, third stone now. He will try now with the level. Doesn't open yet. So what we're doing with our kids is basically the same. We're training them, we're giving feedback, we're guiding them, and they're solving the puzzles. They're solving all these difficult puzzles, as the raven is doing. However, when we change the problem, as the raven, they cannot solve it, because they were trained for this problem. And that's exactly what happened with our kids in the first one. So now he takes a long stick, and he finally takes the piece of meat. So our kids also get a piece of meat, but when we want a different problem, we cannot do it. And that's not critical thinking, and even less creativity. So we have to do it differently. So the raven really solved the problem, and our kids, in our case, really learned, but they're not creative, and they cannot transfer to other domains. So what are we really looking for? I don't know, I showed this video in Las Vegas, so only 2 of you saw it. But that's our aim. For me, it's clearly that's our aim. So what's our aim? Oops, sorry.
I first started about 7, 8 months ago.
So the question is, how can we in school teach towards this direction? How can we help the kids to find out what projects they would like to develop and give them the different language and different realities so that they can really develop projects like this one and have really creative kids? And I would say it's just looking to Vygotsky, my hero, and think a little bit Vygotsky 2.0. And let's see how we can see Vygotsky 2.0. So first, what's knowledge? Let's make an abstraction and think that this is all that's all the knowledge that's available in the world. And that's one person, so this person only knows what's in the circle. And all what's outside the circle, this person doesn't know. So as Steve Jobs once said, a lot of times people don't know what they want until you show it to them. So for example, this object over here, you don't know it exists. So somebody has to show it to you. So here you have person A, and here you have person B. So this person doesn't know that this star exists. So what Steve Jobs did basically, he did Vygotsky, because he related a concept that was unknown to the people to concepts they knew, and so this concept was apparent and was transparent for the other people because now it was related to objects they knew. So this concept is now belonging to the person on the left. So what Vygotsky developed, it was basically the zone of proximal development, which are the concepts that we can really teach the people. Now, if we look a little further and look to the flow concept, what we have to do basically understand what's the challenge and what's the skill so that we can really make a flow so that the people really can learn what they're doing. If somebody wants my presentation, Mike has the presentation. No, yeah, you have it, Mike, so you can give it to other people if they want it. So what we do here is to find the relationship between the skills and the challenges. And the more you learn, you have to increase the challenge, which is the basic concepts of games. So now, who are the mediators? People, of course. Teachers, parents that develop skills. People that develop culture. This is a photograph from 1907 where at school they were taught for war. So this is culture. Kids have to be warriors. And feelings. What is this kid teaching to the other kids? Of course, feelings. So people mediate and teach skills, culture, feelings. And we have tools that mediates and teaches a lot of things. And I like a lot 2001, where there is a part of the movie where this ape throws up the bone, and the bone transforms itself into a spaceship. all are tools, the bone, the spaceship, the computers. And tools, of course, you know, and big mediators. And finally, we have the surrounding. Why in China they consume young, blonde European women? Because they're everywhere. Because you have them in big posters, in movies, everywhere you have blonde European faces. And everybody, even the Chinese, want blonde European faces because you have them everywhere. And who mediates who teaches that this is beautiful? The surrounding. Nobody teaches you. It's the surrounding, they're everywhere. So now comes, okay, we have the mediator. We have the idea that we have to be open to knowledge. So how do we create knowledge? What means creativity? And I have an article here very interesting from The Economist that says the way man's collective brain grows, he says, is by ideas having sex. And what means ideas having sex? Let's go back to our model. You have one person over here. You have an object that belongs to this person. And you have this object that this person doesn't know. It sees but doesn't, perhaps it has seen this object, it doesn't know what it means, has no sense for this person. But now comes another person that has an object B. And this person relates the objects X and A that belongs to the blue person and relates to the unknown objects B. So he teaches the green person to the blue person the object B. Now B belongs to the blue person. And now the person in blue, who knew the W but has no meaning for him, it was just an interesting object, he discovered that relating B with M, W has a meaning now. And in this way, ideas have sex. Because different people began to interrelate each other, and knowledge begins to grow through the interchange of ideas. And now W belongs to the blue person, thanks to the object B that belonged to another person. Now, using this model, how can we teach in a creative way? I'm too fast? So that's our model, that's our aim. How can we reach this aim? This is our model, and let's find out how can we use this model and what it means, this model. First, we have to understand what is W. We saw that there was a W. What is W? So let's make some exercise. This was the first class of opera of my wife over 15 years ago. Look to this picture. How were the people dressed? Can somebody tell me how they were dressed? Sorry? Yes. Something else? All were medieval? All were with funny clothes? All of them? All of them? No. You discovered my wife. Yes, my wife is over there, and she's not with funny clothes. She's with jeans. Now, everybody saw my wife? Honestly, everybody saw my wife? No. So here you have a W. She was there, but you didn't see her. Now, all the plants had flowers. Now you saw the photograph for a lot of time. All the plants had flowers. You were looking for it. Somebody can answer me if all the plants had flowers?
No.
No. Why?
I guess.
No. Outside, just chilling. No. Once somebody told me the orange tree had no flowers. It was not any W. It was an orange tree that doesn't have flowers. So this person really is interested in trees, in plants. So now you see that there are flowers, and you see that the orange tree has no flowers, you see? And there is full of W's. There's full of W's everywhere. So the question is, how do I get this data? And the answer is predisposition. The person that saw the orange tree is because he has plants everywhere. His life are the plants. So what means predisposition? Think on a painter. The painter is looking to a model and he's painting something completely different. Why? Look to Durer. This is a painting of 1500. And now look to Hieronymus Bosch. Same time. Completely different type of painting. Because the predisposition to life was completely different. They saw completely different things. Look this detail of Bosch. This is like Dali, but 500 years earlier, or 400 years earlier. So the predisposition to life was different, and they saw completely different things. Like in the movie The Girl was looking for something and she found dance because she wanted to dance. But somebody helped her to go there. So the first thing is predisposition. That means acknowledging the existence of W. That at least you know there is a W over there. You still don't know what to do with W. At least you know W's over there. Second, you need languages. And what do I mean by languages? This is a chip. For building chips, you need languages. Very sophisticated languages. And if you don't understand those languages, you cannot build chips. For being a fighter of an airplane, you need languages. Completely different from these ones, but very sophisticated languages. And if you don't dominate those languages, you cannot be an airfight fighter. For taking care of ships, you have to know languages. You have to understand the ships. You have to understand the logic of the ships. And if you don't know the logic of the ships, you will lose the ships and they will die. So there's a language over there. The language is everywhere. So now let's look to music and see how different languages can be in the same time for the same topic, which is music. Just very, you won't hear this for hours, only for seconds. This is the Requiem of Mozart, my favorite. Let's now go to Schubert, same time almost, and look how different the language can be. So what we have here is basically how we relate the objects of our domain, of course, and what we create with our objects. So what we have here is we learn to read W. How we read W. And of course, Maximo Bosch read W completely different from Durer or Mozart or Schubert. This was a different reading, and the language they used was different. But language is not all. Context makes also a big difference. I will read it in English, it's in Spanish. Love life, don't destroy it. Every human being has the right to live and respect to his dignity. Can somebody say me what is this for? This was an advertisement, of course, but for what? Can somebody tell me for what is this advertisement? It's in Spanish. It's for Latin America. Huh? Sorry? Reproduction. Abortion. No, it's not against abortion. What is this for? I would say that 99.99% of people say it's against abortion. It's not against abortion. One more? One more. Adoption. No, it's not adoption. I will give you a hint. I took this picture personally in a school in Guatemala. That's a hint. Close. Sorry?
It's not communicating very well.
Not our fault.
It's not our fault.
It's your fault. You'll see it now. Don't be part of a lynching. Don't become an accomplice. Tomorrow it can be you.
Oh.
In Guatemala and Salvador, there's so terrible problem of violence inside schools that they have to do something against it. Boys kill each other. The people kill each other. Now, why didn't we understand this? Why didn't you read this message? Because it was completely out of your context. You have not been in a school where the kids kill each other. So you cannot understand this. So the message was not for you. So the different contexts and different realities. Look, this is one moment of architecture. That's another, and another. The different moments of architecture. But if you don't understand history, you won't understand why it happened this way. Bauhaus is the best example, but I won't go in detail now. But every architecture expression has its own context, its own reality. And we have to understand that reality to really understand why those buildings were those ways. So what happens here is we have now this object this object W, but this object W has a meaning in a given context. And in another context, this object will have another meaning. So it's not only about the language, it's also about the context. In the case of the girl, once again, the context was very clear. She wanted to dance. Now, what's the good thing of the girl? That she used all this knowledge for dancing. That means that she transferred her knowledge. So she used the knowledge. There's no creativity in the paper. There's only creativity when you really can use that knowledge. Look to Bell. Bell had an idea and he implemented it. He transferred it. Look, Einstein equation was unhappily transferred and was transferred in two different ways, but it was transferred. It was not just pure mass. So if we don't transfer, those ideas are useless. And finally, what does she does? The girl evaluates herself. I'm sure that he looks to the videos of herself and see if she really got what she was looking for. So we have to evaluate the transfer. So transfer is basically that we take the relationship and do something with the relationship. And finally the transfer. After the transfer, the evaluation. The evaluation, when you do something, you have to see if what you did really was what your expectations were. This is definitely not the case. Or the Samsung Note 7 is also not the case. They did something wrong, and they have to understand what they did wrong. So if you don't evaluate and see if this corresponds to your object, you're not really doing something in a creative way. So for doing something creatively, you have to have the right predisposition. You have to master languages, understand the context under which you're doing your creative activity, do something with it, transfer it, and finally evaluate if what you did corresponds to what you saw. Let me finish. So we saw first, the important is how we learn. That means the process of how we teach. And the problem is that we are engaged in the 1500 form of teaching. In German, you say Vorlesung, read before. The priest was reading before the other people, was Vorlesen, was reading before. And this Vorlesung hasn't really changed. And what we have done, we are now Vorlesung with computers. And if we don't change the Vorlesung with computers, we won't change the way we teach. And even worse, in the schools of education, we're teaching creativity, constructivism in a non-constructivist way. So the future teachers are 12 plus 4 years in this model, and we ask them to change the model, and we haven't shown the way. So how we teach is extremely important. And the second thing is what we learn. What we learn, I want to show you something of the Center for Curriculum of Redesign, which is from Harvard. And they say the following. Let me start here. We have shown here that there is no sufficient evidence to conclude that mathematics enhances higher order cognitive functions. From the current findings, it is most likely that higher order functions support the building of mathematical skills, not the reverse. And that's why I said that the girl that was studying Darmstadt for me is the future. I think at least until fourth grade, the basic skills are credible. I have a 5-month-old boy, as grandson, not a son, as grandson, and he learns at a pace which is incredible. He's only 5 months, poor boy, and of having such a grandfather. But when they come to school, you stop everything. You stop all the creativity. So we have to stop this. And we have to really think not only how we teach, is what we teach. I really hope that my grandson can learn Darmstadt at least until 4th grade. Thank you very much. And I really hope to have opinions, and a lot of opinions, not only questions.
Could you go back to the last slide? Yeah. So that came from Harvard?
Yes.
When was this published?
So 2014.
Well, the push then to teach kids programming because it's going to help them learn higher order skills is what.
I never believed that.
Pardon me?
I never believed that.
No, we used to, but it's still great. They should learn a program, but it doesn't help.
Look, we started with Logo,
Yeah.
and it didn't help.
Didn't help. So now we're doing it again.
We're doing it.
But it's
And,
actually,
and this paper, the name of the paper is Does Mathematic Education Enhance Higher Order Thinking Skills? It's free in the internet. And if you want the URL, just send me a mail, I'll send you the URL. And what it shows, it only shows not only research of projects, regular projects, but also neuroscience. And they say through neuroscience that there's no finding that math really helps.
But those are exactly the same tests that we did on programming initially, trying to show that programming did in fact increase the reasoning skills of children. And we couldn't ever prove that before. There was no evidence to support that.
And now the UK has it in all the schools of the country, as they did it with the interactive whiteboards.
Wisconsin requires 1 hour a year of coding.
That's a lot.
No, really.
1 hour a year. That's what they require. Madness.
More
I know,
comments.
but it certainly won't hurt.
Yes,
So,
please.
in your opinion, if you look at it through Bloom's taxonomy, what kind of learning does technology provide? Factual learning, conceptual learning, and procedural learning. Those are the basically 3 types. not be. Would I be on the right track there, or?
At the beginning, I tried to use technology in a very sophisticated way to guide the kids to really develop high order thinking skills. And at the end, what we did, we pushed them to be ravens. That's what we did. I would say technology is a very important tool as a knowledge depository. But at the end, for me, the teacher is the key. Absolutely the key. In the case of the girl, technology was key, but was as a knowledge depository.
So I guess I agree with you. I think the question now becomes, what kind of technology is appropriate to enhance creative skill sets?
I can't find it. Here it is. That one. That was very sophisticated. So what kind of technology? Sorry, again?
No, I mean, that would mean that we've got to carefully select the kinds of technology we use, and I'm talking about IT. There are a whole lot of other technologies, but primarily IT, which is used in classrooms and other places for education. We have to selectively identify the kind of technology that would actually enhance these higher level skill sets. Unless there's a generalizable hypothesis that no technology will improve high level skill sets, and I'm not sure.
No, I wouldn't say that no technology. I do believe that we need to use all the resources that we have available. they are easily available, they're instantly available, and they really allow the kids to be in the context that are interesting for them. But the mediation has to be done by the person, by the human being. I'm convinced that the teacher is completely key. And Khan Academy and all that will just train ravens, but not the girl of the movie. And what we want is the girl of the movie, and we don't want ravens. Of course, what we will get in the next 20 years is ravens.
Yes.
And we will get thousands of ravens.
Yes.
But that's why I showed the movie of the raven and the girl. But our target should be the girl and not the raven.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. In 2012, we published something in the Academy of Management on the use of wikis in the classroom or in a hybrid environment. And we found that if you want to create higher level skill sets, it's not so much the technology, but how you use it in the classroom. And over the last 4 years, we're doing the same thing with clickers in the classroom out here. And we sent a couple of pieces where we empirically show that if you use clickers in the right way, a la Vygotskian, Piaget, and that logic of constructivism, then you can actually improve the knowledge in all three areas, whether it's factual, conceptual, or procedural, suggesting that maybe it'll improve creativity.
But it's the way you use the clickers.
Right.
It's not the clickers.
Correct, exactly. It's not the clicker itself, it's how you use them.
That's it. But you need the clickers. Because without the clickers, you couldn't have done it.
Yes.
So you see technology as a medium.
Yes.
Yes, I think that's true for any technology. I can take your work, means mobile technology has been used by so many people. The way you used it in different ways created something, and I think that's, yeah. So it's.
So what we were trying to do is put the focus on the instructor rather than on the technology.
But you need,
I think
I'm
that's
not
where
saying
that's
that you
go.
don't need technology. You need the technology. But you need first the instructor and then the
Correct.
technology. Because if you buy the technology and then you look for the instructor, nothing will happen. That's what happens. They buy schools full of iPads, but the instructor don't know what to do with the iPads. So you're just training ravens. Because you buy software with very sophisticated, because the software is sophisticated, but you're not teaching the way what we're looking for. Because the point is, what are we looking for? Perhaps I am wrong, and we're looking for ravens. I don't know. At least I'm not looking for ravens. Perhaps I'm wrong. Mike.
Well, I was thinking about this diagram. It reminded me of an experiment that Dietrich Derner did, a German psychologist. And he's had on one wall a set of lights, and on another wall a set of switches. And no different number of lights and switches, and no obvious connection between them. And the learning task was to figure out which switches controlled which lights. And he did a controlled study. And in one case, he allowed students to try as many cases as they wanted. It was timed. Both groups had the same amount of time. The experimental group were interrupted after every time they tried. They only got the question, why did you do that? No feedback. They just were asked the question, why did you make that setting? So in the given amount of time, the experimental group had less time to try different settings, but they consistently discovered the right arrangement. So it's a little bit different, but they were sort of forced to think, but not told what to think.
Yeah, and the problem here is that it was guided.
Yeah.
So all the tutoring systems, the intelligent tutoring systems. Yeah.
Raven.
That.
I'm not saying not all. We had this conversation in the car this morning. I'm not saying it's a first light in front of me, which I would say we have to study in more detail what we're doing with intelligent tutoring systems. If they're not really driving ravens, we have to take care. Yes, please.
I have a question. Why you if the model is 9 model?
The model. Let me reach the model. I'm almost there. The model. It's, there it is. Yeah.
I agree. Every step is very important. I don't know why you think the model is
Sequential.
it's
No,
step
it's,
by step.
you're right. You're completely right. No, it hasn't to be sequential. No, completely. No, not necessarily sequential. Can be completely. You need the different steps, but the steps are not sequential. It can be any order. But what I do believe that transference cannot occur. It's not completely right because transference cannot occur if you have not coded and contextualized adequately. Yeah, so I think that these two can be in parallel. If there's no predisposition, you don't start. You start with the predisposition. These two can be in parallel, but these two have to be at the end. So I would say, there has to be some sequence. These two can be in parallel. These two can really be in parallel, the coding and the context. But the others, I think the other have to be some order. You saw it?
Yes, I know. For example, now every student can try to be a maker. So they don't have a lot of knowledge, but they make different in the first.
Yeah.
So they get a lot transfer.
A lot and evaluation, because here comes the evaluation. He makes a lot, but what he did, is it related to what he saw?
So I think the model is very very different, like web model, no line model. Yeah, I agree with you. Every step is very important. I think.
But the
Yeah, in different ways.
We have been having some evidence in line with your girl for years that technology, we've almost stopped looking for technology to enhance creativity, but it seems like it can be used properly to keep children from losing it. I wonder if you would agree with that.
again, I didn't get the point.
You pointed out very well that children are creative at the earlier years. We have some evidence the same, that it goes down in our school systems. But it seems like technology can be used to keep it from dropping or to keep it from being lost. So whereas many people are trying to say technology enhances creativity, we would say, see if technology can be used to keep children from losing it. I wonder if you agree with that statement or if your evidence is different. That is, creativity goes down in our normal schooling system. We had discussions that technology do not enhance mathematics, they do not enhance other things. They maybe do not enhance creative tendency. But perhaps if it keeps it from being lost, that also is a good thing.
Why do we lose creativity? Because we are full of paradigms. We fill our kids with rules and with truths, verdades, ¿cómo se dice verdades? With truths. And in that way we hinder them to construct what's not valid in these paradigms. Now, if I look to the movie, what happens with the internet is that the internet is so big and there's so many realities in the internet. So if you're not focused for just one channel or one context, where you just see one paradigm, but you're open to see a lot of things, you will see much more than what your world is, and you can be much more creative because you're going to see other viewpoints. But that depends how you use the internet.
Yeah, you're W.
Yeah, how you use it. And that depends on the mediator at the end. So everything depends on the family, which is the first mediator.
Yeah, in this model, I'm wondering about the relationship between predisposition and motivation, and also the relationship between the predisposition and the whatever will be evaluated at the end. And the girl video, she had one particular thing she was interested in, but it may not really align with the kinds of things that schools want kids to learn. I wonder if you would comment on those relationships or tensions.
But what's interesting is what she was looking for a project of Michael Jackson for school, yeah.
Oh,
And
it was a school project.
Yeah, it was a school project on Michael Jackson. And while she was looking for Michael Jackson, she changed the context. She changed the context because basically she found Amsterdam, and she refocused and changed the data. Basically, she defined another project, and her project was Amsterdam. So while she was doing one project, she defined herself another project.
That's one way to look at it, but a different way would be she had a different motivation all along. She wasn't interested in the school project, she was interested in dancing.
Yes. So her predisposition changed.
Or she never accepted the school's predisposition, she had her own. Yeah.
So I'd like to go back to the earlier question, which is really interesting, because I think implicit in that was the one about if you don't use technology, the creativity will go down. Is there an optimal level of technology at every stage in a given context? Right? I mean, that's implied in that. I wonder what the thoughts are about that. I mean, are there certain minimal, if we agree that it would go down if you don't have sufficient level of technology, then the assumption is there must be an optimal at each grade level and in each context. That's kind of interesting to think about. That maybe we're giving it too much, and you could use the word paradigm instead of technology, it's the same thing. Is there therefore an optimal level of paradigms or technology provided to individuals over the span of their learning, or over their life, I guess? We learn all the time, right? I don't know, I'm just raising a question.
I would address it in a different way. Since the teacher is the key, how is the teacher using the technology? So it depends. I wouldn't say it's an optimal level. I would say it depends the mediators you have and how the mediators use technology. I think that without technology, you are much more restricted because you can do all this. She could have done the same without technology, but as she says, you cannot see it again and again and again. You can do it with technology. So I would say for me the teacher is key. We have to redefine the teachers. The teacher have to understand this in some way. But if we still teach as we teach with 4 lessons, it's not 4 lessons anymore. But the school still teaches us 4 lessons.
I think we go back to that very first picture of the harvester and the harvest and the robots. we built schools for factories, to produce people to work in factories, because that's what we needed. But we don't need that anymore, but we haven't changed the schools. And I think we want ravens. We want people to work. Yeah. Keep going forward now, a little bit. Keep going. Yeah. There we go, now we're we wanted people to work in the fields, and then we wanted people to work in the factories. But we don't want that anymore. But we've created schools for people to work in factories. If we don't produce ravens, we're going to have a very, very crazy society.
But
We have a lot of use.
that's why I say that's why I say we have an urgency, because we are fabricating ravens.
But
the
no,
ravens
we want
are not.
ravens. We want ravens. We don't want you.
Automation is forcing previous generation.
I'm sorry, I have to go.
But this is the problem, right? Because people are talking about, with the self-driving cars, we're going to put 4 million truck drivers out of work in the next 5 years.
And how many bus drivers?
Yeah. Urban is harder. Highway driving is an easy thing to do with self-driving. Relatively easy. You can do highway driving. Urban is a little more complicated. But still, you're going to put 4 million, in the next 5 years, 4 million truck drivers going to be out of work. What are we doing?
And that's why I showed this curve.
Yeah.
And so
it's
that
going to change.
and the answer was this. This was the answer why it was flat. But now it's here, so that's not the answer anymore.
So we're all philosophers in the future. Sit around and just talk. How do we
No.
make our money? How do we feed our families?
Yeah.
No, we have to create the look when the
It's your fault.
in the 1800 when you made you say linen not with hands but with machine, what are you going to do? And there was always something that somebody had to do with machines. And now somebody has to design what we're going to do with these new machines. It's one step further.
But there is a trend that actually is noticeable right now. It's
Sorry?
There's a trend that's noticeable right now. It's called the freelance economy or the gig economy. Right? There are about 50 million people, freelancers in the US. There are about 100 million in the world, and expanding. And maybe that's because of the issue of creativity. They want to take everything into their own hands and work with it. And it may be good, it may be bad. There's nothing. We don't know what the outcome's going to be, but that is happening.
I didn't get the point.
No. The issue on whether we want ravens or not.
Yeah.
A lot of individuals are now moving into what is called the freelance economy, or becoming freelancers, doing
Okay.
things on their own. As a result, and that is creative, isn't it? I mean, in a sense, you're saying, I don't want to rely on a job in a structured environment. I want to do things on my own.
But on the other side, rich countries are thinking on giving a salary to everybody,
Yeah.
even if they do anything. In Switzerland, they voted that last year.
So really the issue right now is that we're recreating the scenario of when we went from candles to light bulbs, but we don't have anything to substitute the machinery that they were making, that we had new jobs. Like, where is the new job market?
No, I do think we have a new job market, which is the new apps to redefine everything. I do think that there's a lot of jobs there. We have to rethink everything. We have to redefine everything. And this has to be done. The problem is that nobody has seen this new W, because this has to be redesigned completely. Because now we have these robots, we have all this software. So this changed, but we still are accustomed to the 1900, to the Vorlesungen. And the problem is the Vorlesungen, because we're training our culture as it was 1900. But now we don't need the 1900s.
But we've been saying that for years and years and years and years.
But schools of education are still graduating Vorlesungen.
Yes. Yes.
Why have an urgency? Why evoke an urgency as opposed to an appropriate rate of growth for creativity?
Why urgency?
Yeah.
Because the unemployment rate will grow heavily. Because people won't be needed anymore. 4 million truck drivers, and much more and much more. The newspapers will have very few journalists, and the rest will be software. They will just put some keywords, and the machine will write the newspaper. And everywhere. And the unemployment can go up to 50%. So something different has to be done. And that starts from school. That means from the basic skills. So it's not anymore 2 plus 2 is 4. It's much more than that. Because it's now evidence has showed you that looks like it's showing theorems of geometry doesn't seem to be so important anymore.
To shift back to where you began, it seems like if Vygotskian were sitting in the audience, he would agree with almost everything you said, maybe everything. What do you think about Piaget? Would he agree with your model, with your logic, your conclusions? I really haven't seen anything that would be contrary to Piaget, and I wondered what you thought.
My hero is Vygotsky, so who wants to defend Piaget? I have no
That's
answer,
a good
but,
answer, yeah.
but it would interesting somebody has an opinion, because I'm not an expert of Piaget, so I wouldn't really see his point of view. My point of view is Vygotsky. And you saw it, it's very Vygotskian, my talk, yes?
Oh, sure, the scaffolding idea, and Piaget, at least in my conception, is a little more of you think inside and then you act outside. Vygotsky is you emulate outside and scaffold and reach that way. But actually, in my opinion, there's not so much difference between their basic concepts. It's mostly whether you emulate people around you. You learn through the social interaction, or do you sit in a corner and think and then decide to act with people outside of your bubble? It is more Piaget's basic concept. But I think probably it's cyclical, and so you interact. You certainly model your parents and your first teachers at the early age. But when you're creative, you pointed out well that the raven is probably not thinking about the steps. He has been trained himself and has been rewarded in those steps. And Piaget might more along say, well, if it were an ape, perhaps he would, like Sultan, the famous one, would think that he could reach the stick and knock off the banana in that particular experiment. And so perhaps humans have that capacity a little bit higher than the raven. But I think that's the only difference from this simple level. We can discuss it over coffee someday.
Yes.
This issue of software, the cover of Wired magazine about a month or two ago was the end of code. And they argued that we don't need as many programmers anymore because of machine learning. We'll just train the programs. And it's very provocative. I don't believe it because I don't want to believe it. But the power of the machine learning may take over more than we think. And so the new jobs that control the machines, they're going to, in some sense, control themselves. Oh, we need a very small number of coders, programmers.
Then we have a problem.
We do.
Well, another way to think about that, though, Elliot, is that programming continues to go at a higher and higher level.
Yeah.
So instead of really thinking about coding, we think about design steps, and then the machine translates that into code.
Right.
So we need to be training designers.
But we don't. I know, but I teach it, and they don't want to learn to be designers. They want to learn to program. I mean, the kids tell me that. Do I have to do this? I want to program.
They don't want to think.
Well, yeah, that's it. They want to be ravens, you know?
Or they want anything else while they're getting exposed to.
Yes.
That's their content, that's their
Yeah.
of course.
And right now we reward programmers very handsomely.
IBM, create a properly annotated flowchart, and the machine generated Fortran. So you didn't have to learn Fortran. You needed to learn how to design.
But
These are really tough issues.
but something happened that it didn't came through.
It didn't sell. I don't know. I don't know what happened. We used it when I worked there, but nobody else did.
Well, the complexity now of programming, if you watch the higher level designers, they're not writing code anymore. They're
That's what I'm
pulling
trying to say.
pieces from all over. It's a very funny business with programming is today.
Or these chips, when you do these chips, where are the chips?
Yeah,
Where did I leave the chips? I don't remember where they did the chips.
early.
But this is
Language.
very this is code, this is pure code. Where are the chips? Where are the chips? I think the chips come here.
I like the one of the kids kissing.
I have that.
Okay. I
Reminds
think
me
you
of my
passed it,
childhood.
didn't you? There it is.
This is very sophisticated code. This is pure code. This is pure code.
And how many people actually understand it?
Very
That
few.
level.
And that's another issue I read once, that not more than 2,000 or 3,000 people in the world know how to do chips. And if
Yes.
you kill these 3,000 people, there are no chips anymore. Because what's in the book, it's not, you cannot read from the book. You need the people. So then it stops again. So then we can do Vorlesungen again.
Will you do what?
Vorlesungen again. Okay.
Any other questions?
So as an overall, to close it all, what does, in your opinion, what does this mean for us as instructors, as teachers, over the next 10 years? How do we have to change?
Work as close as possible with the School of Education.
Change them.
Change the model, to change,
Huh?
change the model, protest to change the model. Just as what
We
the
have to
teacher
be
said.
really constructivists. Not only teach constructivism, implement constructivism in the schools of education. The schools of education has to be constructivist with their students, because if not, the students won't be constructivists. And there it starts. We really need constructivist thinking. But that starts when you teach in a constructivist way in the university. And today we're not teaching in a constructivist way in the university. There it starts.
Elementary or secondary.
Of course, the teachers of secondary cannot teach in a constructivist way because they were 12 years at school in a Vorlesung and then 4 years or 5 years in the university in a Vorlesung. And what do? They do Vorlesung. Reading before.
You need to be optimistic, though. You can't be negative.
I'm not.
You gotta be optimistic.
I'm not.
Well, we need to be. I think that's a good question. What do we do? We have to. I think we have to be
No, I
optimistic.
think we have to work with the schools of education. That's the key. That's where we change. If we don't work together with the schools of education, it won't change. That's the point. Because we can do projects in schools, but we are doing projects in school for 20, how many years? More than 20 years. And we haven't made the change. So we are not
maybe
going to change it.
But that's even harder.
So maybe
Because
from an
those people are more ingrained.
from an operational standpoint, at the provost office, they really should be taking in faculty development as a serious issue and teaching constructivist learning techniques in the classroom. When I go to my class the first day, I put up a big slogan that says, "The age of the sage on the stage is over. You will be studying yourself, and I'm only going to be the puppeteer, helping you talk to each other." And the students go, "Oh no, this is not a graduate class. 400, 300 students. Oh no, you're not going to do that." But by the end of the semester, they think the work is hard. It really is. I don't think we really teach our faculty enough. I can only speak for us, university, I can speak for others, to really take that approach of saying, students learn through discussion, not through the sage on the stage who's lecturing.
But professors are paid to profess. Our name.
Maybe our title needs to change, right?
But I really,
is delivered in the same way we criticize, right? I don't think our schools will continue to exist in 50 years or hundreds of years. It may just vanish, and there may a new kind of learning group community evolve. This might just not exist in future traditional schools. So don't worry.
And that will divide the rich and the poor. That will divide the rich and the poor even more than it is now.
And what happens with the social abilities?
Yeah.
The social abilities are not only teach at home, they also teach at school, should be taught at school. And if you don't go to school, you really will have problems with social abilities.
Right. That last point, there's a relationship between the teaching method or style or pedagogy, lecture on this, and the space that you're in. So the spaces that we're in typically don't support a lot of the kinds of things that you would like. Lynn and I told you this before, visited this Beijing National Day School where they don't have classrooms, they have laboratories. So everything occurs in a lab.
And they don't have libraries either because all the books are in the labs. They don't have a specific library. So everything is kind of scattered.
Yeah,
People sit around.
but there's a relationship between the space that you're in and what you do. That's what I was trying to say.
That's a Montessori model, right? The space itself isn't a traditional classroom. It's
Right.
exposure to different social skill sets and building blocks. And they learn faster. There's studies that show that.
But this model, the sense that you're wrong in that we had a conversation that you don't usually have in a classroom.
Yes.
So
now.
this isn't traditional.
Yeah, because I brought a point, and then we opened the discussion because my whole presentation was half an hour and was very dynamic. There was no text. So it was more pictures, and I brought ideas and very few concepts, and then I brought up the discussion. And I did it this way so that we had a discussion. And in school there's no discussion. And if your viewpoint is different from the teacher, you have a problem. So you have a problem.
Okay, on that
We
note,
have a problem.
on that note, thank you very much, Miguel. It was wonderful talk. Please still here, please. There is still some stuff there. Actually, most of it seems to be still there. So please help yourself and let's have some informal discussion.
Right. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think